Back to Books, Tea and Biscuits. In this video I'm reviewing Sleeping Giants.
And I'm reviewing Wuthering Heights. Without any further ado, do you want to start?
Yeah, so I'll go first. So actually on this review, which is Sleeping Giants by Sylvain Neuvel, that's the cover, I've actually written down my review, so I'm going to be looking at the camera and trying to read because I can't remember everything I've written. So first and foremost, I give this book 4 stars out of 5. I actually really enjoyed it, and it's a really quick read because I'll show you some of the pages. So it's more like written in an interview style, so the thick bold is the questions and the answers are like the normal text, so it's a quicker read than like normal paragraphs, even though there are some in there that are like lengthy answers. Because it's not just pages and pages and pages upon text, and you've got some shorter questions as well, shorter sections as well. It was really quick to read. There are normal chapters in there, like this one, which is on page 90, and you know they go on as normal, like 9 or 10 pages, or in that case 3 pages. So it's a really quick read in that aspect. I really enjoyed it. I give it 4 out of 5. And basically what happens, I can't give too much away because I don't want to ruin the plot, but the story starts off with an 11-year-old girl she actually sees these turquoise lights shining on a family's farm in a field, and she walks down, and next thing she knows she's fallen into a hole, and she wakes up after, you know, I think she's hit her head or something, and she wakes up and she's facing up and she can see her dad, and she can see like the EMTs, the firemen, and you know, they get her out, and then she turns around to see what she's fallen into because there's something underneath that's hard, and she's fallen into this giant hand, and the giant hand's about like 20 foot big, and it's not connected to anything, it's just a giant hand. And then the next chapter is about 15-20 years later, and she's actually a scientist, a physicist that works for like University of Chicago, I think, and it ends up that she's working in this program that try and look for other body parts to connect to this hand, and she comes up with a chemical compound that, you know, they fly across the countries and spread it, and then these like body parts just appear with turquoise light surrounding them, and it actually turns out that they're from an alien civilization from 3,000 years ago, and they try and put everything together, even then it doesn't connect with joints and anything. They just, when they put the pieces close together, they just go together. And something tragic happens, and there's another person that, you know, takes over the program, but she's corrupt and she's a sociopathic scientist, and they have to escape this US military like imprisonment that they've been all captured into, and it turns out that the robot is controlled by a shaft within the torso, and the scientists go in there and they control it, and obviously I can't say what happens and everything else, but it's really enthralling, it's really interesting, and it turns out that at the end the tragedy that you thought happened doesn't happen, and the scientist at the beginning, Rose Franklin, she actually wakes up, but she's 5 years younger than originally stated in the beginning of the book. So it's all about, you know, these like robots not taking over the world, but you understand why they're there, why they're suddenly appearing now. Again, I can't give too much away, but I'm gonna. So yeah, they were left behind by a great alien nation over 3,000 years ago as a test of humanity's evolution. There is a book 2 and a book 3, so I can't wait to get them. But yeah, 4 stars out of 5 from me for that one. I hope you've read it, I hope you enjoyed it. I actually read the physical book for this one, I didn't listen to the audio book. But I had to read it like this because I didn't want to bend my spine on it.
You're starting to like the odd sci-fi book, aren't you?
Yeah, the odd one. The person who recommended this to me wants me to read a space opera next, but I've said no, I won't read it because it's about that thick, and space operas are to me, they're just boring. This kind of sci-fi, which is like fiction, fantasy and sci-fi, I'll read, but for sci-fi like, I don't know, Peter Hamilton or anything like that, I can't read that. Too much, yeah. But yeah, I love that. I enjoyed that. If you do want to read the show, you can read it.
Yeah.
I think it's something Joe really likes to cover.
I do. I think it's very enigmatic.
Yeah.
Very spooky as well, sort of in the stars.
And the title, well, not the title because the title Sleeping Giants, but the beginning, the very first text on the cover says the end has just begun. So,
right, so like they have with aliens, no one, you know, you can't be heard if you scream in space, that sort of thing. It's like a...
Yeah, and what I wanted to do before we actually let Jo do her review, just read a few things from the back, just so you can understand why I didn't want to destroy the plot for anybody. So this thing, it rewrites history. It dares us to question what we know about ourselves and everything. As a young girl, Dr. Rose Franklin made a life-changing discovery. Hidden deep underground, she found an enormous ornate metal hand. Tests proved the artefact predates all human civilization. So the metal on the hand, basically, there's no compound that humans have ever used or seen, and that's why it only reacts to this certain chemical compound. When they spread it across the land, it doesn't affect humans, but when they spread it across the land, these, like, it's like these artefacts rise up from the ground. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then it says, where did it come from? Dr. Franklin, 15 years later, leads a top secret investigation into the mystery of its origin. But finding answers leads her to an awe-inspiring question: were we meant to find it? When it emerges that there may be more pieces buried out there, a fierce race begins to solve this vast global puzzle. And what happens when we do? And what I forgot to mention is the interview style of the book.
Is she being interviewed or something?
Well, there's her, there's other like US pilots and co-pilots and things like that, but you never find out who the interviewer is. And they ask the question and he goes, well, you don't need to know, I'm of great wealth. The US military listened to me, the government listened to me. You don't find out who it is.
Unless it's probably in one of the other books.
Unless it's in one of the other books, yeah.
Probably book 3 or something.
Book 1 is the Themis files or Themis files.
Oh, right.
So yeah, that's really good. I really enjoyed that.
Good.
4 stars out of 5 for me. It wasn't quite a 5 because there was some parts of the book that I thought were quite wordy and didn't need to include all that detail. That put me off a little bit. I just wanted to get straight to the point. I really liked the interview style of the book. But yeah, 4 stars out of 5 from me. And that's, I thought I wasn't going to like it as much as I did, but I did. So that's mine done. Jo, you do yours now?
Wuthering Heights, as we all know, by Emily Bronte. I forgot what a pig Heathcliff was. When you listen to Kate Bush's version of Wuthering Heights, you imagine all this beautiful romance, the passion, the love. He's a pig. Also, what I forgot about this book is the story's being told by a third person. A gentleman has decided to rent one of Heathcliff's properties, and the lady who looks after it, he asks about the owner and that. So she starts the story of how it all began. So the story is coming from somebody else. It starts off when they're, Kathy's a little girl and she's with her parents and, her brothers, and her dad seems to be a bit of a gambler, and he goes away. Normally he always brings them, he'll say, what do you want when I come back, and he brings them presents and whatever, and he brings a little boy home. You don't know how he got him. You get the impression that he won him in a bet or, gambling or something, or he felt sorry for the lad because he was homeless. And it's Heathcliff. And he's only young, so he decides to come bring him home so he's got somewhere to live and be fed and everything. But he's ostracised by his adopted brothers, and Kathy likes him, but they sort of have this passionate sort of constantly digging at each other and that, but you can see there's passion for me, and they do get close. And then later on, as everybody knows if they've ever seen the film Wuthering Heights with Laurence Olivier and Merle Oberon, I think, Kathy marries the Linton's son, because he's well off and she likes him, although she's madly, passionately. The passion is really, really toxic and unhealthy with Heathcliff, because he feels the same. But he overhears a saying that she would never marry Heathcliff, and of course he takes offence at this. She marries Linton, and Heathcliff marries Linton's sister. But he gives her a horrible life, a terrible life, and eventually she gets the courage and she leaves him, but she's pregnant and she has a sickly child. In the meantime, Cathy, she has a daughter, but she dies during childbirth, and the little girl's called Catherine. And then that's when the story really takes off, and you see how brutal and horrible Heathcliff really is. He sort of semi-kidnaps this girl. She finds out he's her uncle, and she ends up visiting him, and she goes there the one time. I mean, his son's grown up and he's living with him, and she's living at home with her dad. Her dad's very poorly now, and they go for a walk, her and the nurse, well, not nurse, maid. And Heathcliff cons them into coming back to the house, to his house, and he locks the doors and he won't let them go. Her dad is on the verge of dying and he won't let them go, and he blackmails her into marrying his son. Heathcliff is so angry that he didn't get his Cathy Senior, that he decides he's going to make them all suffer. Okay. So that's what he does. So young Cathy, we'll call Cathy Senior Cathy, and we'll call her Catherine, the little girl Catherine. Well, she's like 16 now. And he forces her to marry his son, who's a sickly child, very sickly, and she does, if it means that she can get home and be with her dad before he dies. She gets to say goodbye to her dad. But Heathcliff is so angry and toxic and vile. He's never forgiven them because he could never have Cathy. So he decides to get his own back on several different occasions. It's a good read. You just forget all about the romance of it because it is brutal. He's not a nice man at all. He's vile. And you know, you think, why does Cathy? What does she love about him? But their relationship is very toxic.
Was he nice to her?
Not really. They were sort of, they understood each other. There was times he was quite pleasant and times she was quite pleasant, and there was other times she was horrible to him and he was horrible to her. There was such a passion between them, and it's like it's ate them up.
Oh, okay.
It is a good read. There's parts in it where you think, like you, is there so much need for all that information?
It just goes straight to the point.
Yeah. Can you just forego those two paragraphs?
But isn't that how the Brontes wrote their stories?
It is. And I can understand it to a point because it just gives you another view on things and that, but sometimes you think that was just not necessary. As I say, it is a good read if you like this sort of thing. If you like classics, or give it a go. If you don't...
When was it written?
God.
Was it like the 19th or the 20th century?
She was around in the 1800s, so it's the 19th century,
yeah.
So that's when it was... It would have been written within the...
Well, she was young when she written it, wasn't she?
Yeah, they were all quite young, they were all quite talented.
1800s then?
Yeah. So it is good. The other issue I had with this is they're in Yorkshire. That's where it's set, in Yorkshire. But there is one gentleman in this book. They don't do it. She didn't do it with anybody else in the book. She only does it with this chappie who helps on the farm. You know, he's also like a lay preacher or something like that. He's very God-fearing and he teaches the children the Bible and that, and he's very proper, and you know, and he speaks the Yorkshire dialect, and she's put it literally, the Yorkshire dialect in there. So unless you've lived in Yorkshire for God knows how many years, you're going to look at that and think, what? you can't even pronounce it.
Really?
Really. I was born in Yorkshire, and I know we weren't in Yorkshire for long, but the point is, I have never seen the dialect spelled out. And I thought, what's all this? But I'd understand if it was like a lot of the way. But it's only this one character where everything's done in the Yorkshire dialect. It makes it look like a foreign language, to be honest. And it's good, but you know, when he comes on and it's sort of a couple of pages where there's this conversation, you really have difficulty. And that's the other thing that irritated me, because I like to be able to know what he's saying. And although I looked at it and I think, oh, I'm getting an idea of what that word means, I've got no idea what that word means. So you try and look at the next conversation, whoever's talking to him, you think, that's what he's saying. So sadly, mainly because of that difficulty, I can only give this a 3.5. That's because there's like 2 pages where I really struggled to read the conversation, and I don't understand why it was done like that. I mean, yes, maybe put the odd word like "do" and you know.
Maybe it told you in the preface and you just didn't read it. No.
No. And you'd think there'd be some way of knowing what they said, even if it was at the bottom.
Give you,
this is what he said, because unless you know.
Give you an index at the back of what like a thesaurus told.
Yeah, to give you an idea. But otherwise, it is a good book. It's just I found that very irritating, and which is why I've graded it down. If that hadn't been there, I'd have probably given it a 4.
Okay.
But otherwise, because of that, I'm sorry, I've given it a 3.
That's fine. A 3 or 3.5? Because you said
3.5. 3.5.
Okay.
Let's be fair. Yes, a 3.5.
Okay.
So that's.
So I don't think I'd ever read that. I wouldn't like it. I don't think.
I don't think you would.
I do like classics. I've never read a Bronte. I don't think. I know Charlotte Bronte is a famous novelist as well, isn't she?
Yeah.
And Anne. Is it Anne? Anne.
Yeah.
But I've never read Wuthering Heights. So. That being said, the next video I'm going to be reviewing The Velveteen Rabbit by Margaret Williams.
And I am finally going to be videoing. I'm going to be reviewing. Finally, after all these weeks, Cats in Space. Too Many Gods. The actual title is Destination Unknown, and it's a story behind the album Too Many Gods, and this is episode 1, which tells you that obviously they're going to do other books with other albums, but this is the one I'm going to be reviewing next.
Yeah, so thank you everyone for watching. I hope you like that. Hope you've had a cup of tea as well along with us, and we'll see you in the next video. Keep reading, guys. Bye.
Do you want my glasses?
No, I just can't read my writing.